Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. My daughter said I wasn't elegant enough to meet her friends, so I rented the house next door. The first time my daughter asked me to stay in my room while her friends were over, she said it so gently I almost missed the blade beneath her words. "Mom," Erin said, smoothing down her silk blouse, "they're just very curated. You know how people are these days." Curated. She meant expensive, polished, thin, glossier than real life. Not like me. I was in my usual, a soft cotton top and corduroy pants, bare feet tucked under me on the couch. My silver hair was in a loose clip, no makeup, half a cup of lukewarm coffee by my elbow. I had been hemming one of Jamie's little superhero capes and hadn't realized she'd even come home. "I can stay out of the way," I offered, unsure. Erin smiled, but not the real kind. The one that stretched her mouth but didn't touch her eyes. "No offense, Mom. It's just, they're brand partners. It's better if they think I'm a little more—" She waved vaguely at the air. "Refined." I nodded like I understood. But I didn't. "Not really. I'm 65. My name's Miriam Cook, though most people around here still call me Miss Mimi. I was a seamstress for 37 years. I raised 2 kids, mostly alone, after Charles left us for someone named Trina from the accounting department. I never remarried. I didn't have time to fall apart. Instead, I opened a small alterations shop downtown. Mimi's Stitchery. Nothing fancy. Just good work, done with care. I stitched wedding gowns and school uniforms, hems for big interviews, and little velvet capes for kindergarten plays. Erin used to sit on the floor under my counter with colouring books while I pinned fabric to mannequins. She'd hum softly and sometimes fall asleep beside a basket of zippers. I kept extra goldfish crackers in my sewing drawer just for her. Back then, she used to tug on my apron and say, "You're magic, Mommy. You fix people." I wonder when that stopped being true. 3 years ago, Erin asked me to move in with her family after my hip replacement. I didn't want to at first. I liked my quiet duplex, my red kettle, my reading chair with the worn floral pattern. But the stairs were getting harder, and she insisted I shouldn't be alone. So I came. I gave her my savings for the down payment, $60,000, because the bank needed a bigger deposit. "We'll put you on the deed," she'd promised. "You're part of the family." That never happened, by the way. I didn't press. I never liked conflict. Besides, I loved being with my grandson Jamie, who was 6 and sweet and still believed in fairies. I packed his lunchboxes with heart-shaped sandwiches. I patched his stuffed bear 5 times. I helped pick up groceries, folded laundry, and cooked meals whenever their nanny called out, which was often. They joked that I was bonus help, but I never minded. Helping is how I show love. Until it started to feel like that was all I was good for. The second time Erin asked me to not come downstairs, she phrased it as a favor. "Mom, would you mind staying upstairs this evening? I have a collaboration dinner with Everglass, and a few influencers are coming. I just don't want any distractions." Distractions. That's what I'd become. I said yes, of course. I always say yes. But that night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, with my knitting untouched and my glasses sliding down my nose. The laughter downstairs felt like it came from a world I was no longer invited to. And that's when it started, the whispering voice in my head that said, "You gave her your hands, and now you can't even be seen." One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone while I watered the plants in the hallway. No, she's fine, harmless, like a little ghost. Just putters around, folds things, makes soup. She knows not to interrupt. A little ghost. My knees buckled slightly, but I kept my grip on the watering can. Later, I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a ghost. My hair was still thick and healthy, pulled back neatly with a tortoise clip. I had good skin. My mother always said cold cream and kindness were better than surgery. I wore simple clothes, yes, but they were clean and well kept. But I knew what Erin meant. I wasn't glossy. I wasn't her aesthetic. The final blow came on Jamie's birthday. I had made a felt birthday crown like I used to when Erin was little. It had his name, gold stars, and a little red number 7 stitched to the front. I embroidered it at night, after they'd gone to sleep. When I gave it to him that morning, his face lit up. "Can I wear it at my party?" I beamed. "Of course, sweetheart. That's what it's for." But 30 minutes before guests arrived, Erin pulled me aside. "Mom," she said, in that sing-song voice people use when they're pretending to be polite, but really aren't. "Can we not do the crown? It's too homemade. Doesn't go with the theme." The theme was modern woodland, whatever that meant. Everything was beige and sage and extremely photogenic. "But he wants," I began. She cut me off with a look. "Please, just let me handle it. You can help in the kitchen if you want, or take a break upstairs." I stood there for a moment, crown still in my hands. Then I nodded. I walked back to the guest room, closed the door, and I cried. Not loud, not messy. Just silent tears that soaked into my shirt collar as I sat on the edge of the bed, crown limp in my lap. Jamie never saw it again. That night, when everyone had gone and the house was quiet, I packed my things. Not all of them, just enough. My clothes, my sewing kit, my knitting bag, a small photo album, and the felt crown. I slipped out at 11:30 p.m., leaving a note. "Thank you for everything. I'll be fine. I just need some air. Mom." I walked 2 blocks to the 7-Eleven and sat there until dawn, my suitcase leaning against the ice machine. Then I called a woman named Beatrice, a former client of mine who used to bring me her mother's old coats for tailoring. She had once offered me a spare room in her back house if I ever needed it. She didn't ask questions when I called, just said, "It's yours? Come on over." And so I did. Bee's place was on a quiet street, lined with sycamores and forgotten charm. Her back house was small but clean. A kitchenette, a fold-out couch, and a sunlit nook with a round table just big enough for sewing. I didn't plan to stay long, but 3 days turned into 3 weeks, then a month. And something strange began to happen. I started sleeping better. I started humming again when I cooked. I even stitched myself a new blouse from leftover cotton, soft blue with hand-embroidered cuffs. I hadn't sewn for me in years. Bee peeked in one day and said, "You know, you should really take commissions again. People pay for real work now, especially if it looks handmade." I laughed at first. Then I stopped laughing, because the truth was, I could. And not just for money, but for me. I didn't set out to start a business. At first, it was just little things. A hem for Bee, a linen tote bag for her niece's graduation, an apron with deep pockets for a neighbor who sold sourdough at the Saturday market. I worked at that little round table by the window with the radio playing softly and the kettle always warm. My hands knew what to do. They always had. One day, Bee came home holding a garment bag and a big grin. "It's from Seraphine," she said, like I was supposed to know what that meant. "I got it at 40% off because the hem was uneven. Think you could fix it?" The dress was cream silk, heavier than it looked, and cut for someone with more money than hips. I fixed the hem, took in the bodice just slightly, and reworked the sleeves so they fluttered instead of clung. Took me 2 hours. When Bee wore it to her niece's baby shower, 3 women asked her where she bought it. She smiled. Oh, just a local tailor, quiet genius. They wanted my number. I said no at first. I didn't want clients. I wanted peace. But the next week, one of them left a bottle of wine and a box of vintage buttons at B's door with a note. Please, one dress. I'll pay anything. Just no labels. I want it to feel like it came from a real person. That part caught me. A real person. So I made her a dress. And that's how it began. By fall, I had a dozen clients, all by word of mouth. They didn't come for fast fashion. They came because I made things feel loved. One woman called my work grandmother core. Another said it was slow luxury. I didn't know what either of those meant, but I appreciated the tone. I never used my name. Instead, I signed each piece with a small embroidered tag. Made by M. The M could stand for anything. Magic, memory, Miriam. I liked the mystery. B helped me set up a little Instagram account under that name. She took pictures of my stitching, my teacups, my hands over fabric. She blurred my face at first. Adds to the brand, she said. Within 2 months, I had over 3,000 followers. Nothing viral. Just steady, quiet interest from women who missed the feeling of being touched by something human. They messaged me things like, "Your work makes me cry. My grandmother used to sew like this. I wore your blouse to my chemo appointment. I felt held. It feels like you made it just for me." I did, every time. And yet, I never told Erin. Because I wasn't ready. One chilly morning, Bea burst through the back house door with a copy of Chic Midwest Living magazine in her hands. "Page 42, she said, already halfway laughing. "You're gonna love this." There, across 2 glossy pages, was Erin. Perfect posture. Cream sweater. Her little family arranged around a table like a Scandinavian furniture ad. The headline read, "Modern Elegance, How Erin Maxwell Blends Motherhood, Style, and Soulful Design." I sat down slowly. There were paragraphs about her brand, her partnerships, her intentional living. Mentions of eco-linen and handmade pieces. One quote stuck out. "I'm drawn to things that tell a story. Pieces with depth, not just surface shine." I stared at that line for a long time. Because I'd heard it before. Erin used to say that about my sewing. When she was 8, she once hugged one of my handmade dresses and whispered, "This feels like home." Now I couldn't even be seen in her home. But here's the thing about being invisible. You see everything. A week later, I saw the for rent sign. The house next door to Erin's had been empty for a year. A drab grey Tudor, slightly crooked porch, dusty windows. The sign had faded letters, almost apologetic. "Wouldn't it be funny if you moved in there?" Bea joked as we passed it. I stopped. Looked up at the house. Thought of Jamie's crown, still in my sewing bag. Thought of that guest room where I wasn't allowed to cook cabbage or wear slippers downstairs. Then I said, "No. It wouldn't be funny. It would be perfect." Bea blinked. "You're serious?" "I am." 2 weeks later, I signed the lease. The landlord was shocked anyone wanted it. I paid 6 months up front, using the savings I hadn't told Erin I still had. Cashing in a few bonds, Charles left me after the divorce helped too. The house needed work, but it had bones. Good bones. Like a forgotten dress in a closet that just needed a little pressing. I painted the walls soft cream, bought curtains with tiny embroidered flowers, set up a sewing corner in the sunroom, put Jamie's crown on the shelf above my fabric rack. And most importantly, I stayed quiet. No one knew I lived there. Not Erin. Not Jamie. Not the women who wore my clothes to dinners where I was never invited. Not yet. I became a ghost again, but this time by choice. I'd watch Jamie get off the school bus from my kitchen window. He was taller now, wore bright red sneakers, and carried a backpack that looked too heavy. He always turned back for one last wave at the front door. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'd catch Erin standing there, holding the doorframe, looking tired. Not elegant, just human. One afternoon, a knock came at my side door. A woman stood there in large sunglasses and a worried frown. "Sorry," she said quickly. "Are you made by M?" I hesitated. "Yes." She pushed up her sunglasses. "I need a dress for an awards gala. My usual stylist ghosted me, and I'm presenting. It's in 4 days." She looked familiar. Then it clicked. She had been in that chic Midwest living spread, one of Erin's inner circle. I nodded. "Come in." She never asked my name. I never gave it. She left 2 days later with a sapphire silk dress that hugged her perfectly. That weekend, my inbox exploded. By spring, I had orders from women in 4 cities. I still didn't ship, still worked only by hand, by feel, by face, no assistance, no labels, just care. And all around town, at influencer brunches and curated luncheons, women wore my clothes, unaware that the woman they once called too homemade now dressed the very image of their aspiration. It was quiet. It was poetic. And it was enough. But the universe has a sense of timing. Because one Monday morning, Erin showed up at my door. Not the front. The side. The business entrance. She didn't recognize the house at first. Probably thought I worked here. She was holding a dress. It was one of mine. Erin held the dress like it had personally offended her. She didn't look up right away. Just stood in the little side garden by my gate, lips pursed, carefully manicured hand gripping the hanger by its hook. "I'm looking for the person behind this," she said finally. "She doesn't have a website, just an Instagram. Made by M. Ever heard of her?" I blinked once. I might have. She narrowed her eyes. "This piece was for Fallon Greer. It's beautiful, and completely inconsistent with the aesthetic of her usual stylist. It's older, somehow, but in a good way." I couldn't help the smile that tugged at the corner of my mouth. She continued. "Fallon said she got it from someone in this neighborhood. She wouldn't give a name. Said the seamstress was intensely private." I stayed quiet. Erin took a breath. "I'm hosting a partnership dinner this Friday. 16 people. Big names. I need something. Simple, tonal, but with texture. Not boring." I almost laughed. That word again. Curated, tonal, textural. But not boring. She sounded like a Pinterest board with a pulse. Still, I nodded. "Come in." She didn't recognize me right away. The side entry led into a workspace full of fabric, a tea kettle, and a single dress form draped in muslin. My silver hair was tied back in a bun. My blouse was cream linen, and I wore glasses she hadn't seen before, the kind with thin wire frames and soft amber lenses. It was as if she saw what she expected, a seamstress, and her mind filled in the rest. "I like your space," she said politely. "It's minimal." I gestured to the small stool by the mirror. "Sit. Let's talk." I measured her in silence. Shoulders, waist, arms. She shifted as I wrapped the soft tape around her ribs. "Have we met before?" she asked, frowning. "Maybe in another life," I said softly. She laughed, like I was being whimsical. "Well, whoever you are, you have magic fingers. This dress Fallon wore? I swear, it was like it belonged to her bones." I made a small hum of acknowledgement and noted her measurements on a worn notepad. "And what's your name?" she asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I said, "I'll bring the dress Friday afternoon." She tilted her head. "You'll deliver it?" "I prefer it that way." Erin nodded. "Fine. Just, please don't tag me in anything. My brand is very cohesive. I'll tag you if it works with the campaign." That made me smile again, this time without hiding it. I watched her walk away in tailored jeans and expensive flats. And then I sat down on my stool, took a long sip of Earl Grey, and began sketching. Not just a dress. A memory. The gown was charcoal silk, with delicate embroidery along the neckline. Subtle feather shapes, almost like shadows. It was sleeveless, clean, modern. But the back held a secret. A single panel of antique lace, stitched from a salvaged doily, nearly invisible, unless she moved just right. It was grace disguised as elegance, and it fit her perfectly. When she slipped it on in my studio, she gasped. "How did you—" I smiled gently. "It's what I do." She twirled slowly, eyes scanning the mirror. It's like nothing I've worn before. It feels safe." I said nothing, but in my chest something shifted, a knot loosened. She left without paying that day, said she'd Venmo, never did. Didn't matter. I wasn't after money anymore. I was after the story. The party was 2 blocks away. From my upstairs bedroom window, I could see the soft glow of string lights across Erin's backyard, the shuffle of heels on concrete, waiters in black, the soft clink of curated glassware. I recognized half the guests from her social media posts. The other half I had once seen only as shadows, voices behind doors, footsteps down halls. Erin stepped out of the house around 8:15. The charcoal gown moved with her like ink in water. People noticed. Heads turned. One woman I recognized, Fallon, grabbed Erin's arm, pointing to the back lace detail. She whispered something. Erin nodded proudly, like she'd created it herself. And for a moment, I felt the familiar flicker of heat in my chest. "She's still using you." But then Jamie ran into the yard, wearing a little cape, not one I made, but a cheap, glittered thing from a party store. He was happy. That mattered more. I closed the curtain. And I let it go. Until she came back. Again. Tuesday morning. This time with coffee and a half-eaten croissant. "I need to know," she said, as soon as I opened the door. "Where did you train?" I blinked. "Train? You sew like someone who studied under couture houses, but you're not on LinkedIn, no bio, no press. Who are you?" I let her sit at the kitchen island. She leaned in. "I've had dozens of stylists. They all make things that look good. You made something that felt like me, like the me I remember, the me before. All of this." She gestured vaguely to her phone. And suddenly, there it was, the ghost of the girl who used to hum under my sewing table. I set my teacup down. "You said once I was a distraction," I said calmly, "that I didn't fit your aesthetic." She blinked. I watched the words settle. Her jaw slackened. "What?" "Birthday party. Jamie, the crown." She froze. "Wait." I took off my glasses. And finally, her eyes cleared. "Mom." I nodded once. Her face drained of color. "But how?" "I left," I said simply. "You made it clear I wasn't welcome, so I left." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She gripped the counter. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to be told anything anymore. I wanted to remember who I was." She sat very still. Outside, a bird chirped in the sycamore tree. My sewing machine hummed softly behind us, like a second heartbeat. "I wore your dress," she said after a long pause. "I know." "They loved it." "I know." Tears welled up, but she blinked them away. "You must hate me," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "I was sad. That's not the same." We didn't speak for a few days. But then one afternoon, a small envelope arrived at my gate. Inside was a check, more than I ever expected, and a handwritten note that said, "I can't undo what I said, but I'd like to learn how to speak to you again, if you'll let me." I didn't reply, not right away, because forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a thread you pick up, slowly, stitch by stitch. It took me a week to write her back. I kept starting and stopping. Nothing dramatic, no big speech. Just a simple sentence that didn't drip with guilt or try to force anything open too soon. I finally settled on this. "You can come for tea next Thursday, 4 p.m. Bring Jamie. No expectations. Just your real self." And I left it at that. She came, late, flustered, without makeup, hair in a ponytail, Jamie's backpack slung over one arm. He ran straight into my kitchen and threw his arms around me. "Nana!" he shouted, like nothing had changed, like no time had passed. I held him longer than I should have. He smelled like apples and dirt and markers. Then he pulled something from his backpack. "I drew you something," he said proudly. It was a drawing of me in a blue blouse, sitting at a sewing machine, with what looked like superhero capes stacked beside me. I had grey hair and a big smile and glitter stars above my head. I blinked fast and kissed the top of his head. "I love it." Erin hovered by the door. She didn't sit until I invited her. She didn't speak until the second cup of tea. "I thought you were gone," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Like really gone." I was. "Why here?" I sipped slowly. "Because I wanted to be close, but on my terms." She nodded, face tight. I deserved worse. "I wasn't looking to punish you," I said gently. "I just needed to remember I'm more than what you see." She swallowed hard. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached into her purse and pulled out a red gingham crown, the felt one, the one I thought she'd thrown away. "I found it," she said, "stuffed in a drawer. Jamie didn't remember it, but I did." She set it on the table. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for making you feel like a background extra in your own family." I let her words settle. Then I reached over, touched her hand, and said, "Thank you. Not for the apology, but for showing up real." Over the next few months, things began to shift. She didn't move me back in. I didn't ask her to. Instead, we started having weekly breakfasts. Jamie would draw, and I'd tell him stories about what fabric used to cost, or how his mum once stapled together a Halloween costume when I ran out of time to sew. Sometimes Erin listened. Sometimes she brought her own stories. Smaller ones, unpolished, human. There were still moments when she got prickly, when her phone buzzed one too many times, and she turned into a version of herself I didn't recognize. But she always came back. And I always stayed. She asked me to make her something again. Not for an event, not for a photo. Just for her. She didn't give specifics, just said she wanted to feel like herself in it, not a version she posed as. I made her a blouse in soft lavender linen with hand-stitched pleats across the shoulders and delicate shell buttons. It had the faintest embroidery along the cuffs, tiny acorns and oak leaves, a nod to strength. When she put it on, she teared up. "It feels like me." I smiled. "It is you." A few weeks later, I hosted a small open house for Made by M. Just 12 people, old clients, Bee's friends, a few locals. I hung samples on simple wood hangers and served chamomile tea in mismatched china cups. At the end of the day, a young woman approached me. "I'm starting over," she said softly. "New job, new apartment. I want one piece that reminds me I'm not broken." I made her a deep green wrap dress with a stitched hem that read, "Still growing." That's what we all are, I think. Even me. Jamie's birthday came around again. He asked me, very seriously, if I would make him the real crown this time, not the plastic one. Erin watched us with a soft smile. I made it golden yellow this year, with little applique planets and a shooting star across the front. When he wore it to the party, which was just in the backyard, no brand sponsors, just neighbors and friends, Erin whispered in my ear. I told him he could wear anything he wanted. I squeezed her hand. She didn't let go. I never went back to being who I was before. Not the helper, not the background, not the invisible woman folding laundry behind someone else's life. Now I make things that matter, not because they're expensive, but because they're felt. I don't have a storefront. I don't want one. I have sunlight, my kettle, my old scissors, and a boy who still thinks I'm made of magic. Sometimes I think about how close I came to disappearing for good. But then I remember I didn't vanish. I rethreaded. I stitched myself back together. And in the end, what I made wasn't just a dress or a name. It was a boundary, a home, a quiet life that belongs entirely to me.